You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. Have you ever considered the profound impact of spirituality on anxiety management? Find out more in today's episode. This episode contains adult subject matter and listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. Today is part of International Stress Awareness Week in the UK, and this is a special bonus episode. In this episode, we explore a transformative journey towards finding spiritual solutions to anxiety. Together, we embark on a profound exploration of the human spirit's resilience and its capacity to alleviate the burdens of anxiety through spiritual practices and insights. Throughout our conversation, we reveal the potent synergy between spirituality and mental well-being, highlighting how these approaches can serve as powerful tools for navigating the challenges of anxiety. As we navigate the depth of this topic, we uncover a myriad of spiritual practices, mindfulness techniques, and wisdom traditions that offer practical solutions for anyone grappling with anxiety. Our guest illuminates a path towards greater peace, resilience, and self-discovery, fostering a deeper understanding of how spirituality can serve as a guiding light in the journey towards anxiety relief. Mark Mezadourian is an intuitive specializing in connecting with angels and guides. Accessing spirituality with heart-centered practicality is the goal of his work. Free recordings of angel experiences for healing, for clearing, to support empaths, and to build a relationship with angels and guides are available on Instagram, YouTube, and Insight Timer, and free Zoom events are offered weekly. Let's meet Mark Mezadourian. Hi, Mark. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because spiritual solutions for anxiety is such a fascinating topic for holistic healing. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad to talk with you.
Yeah, I have a feeling this will be a very enlightening episode and a topic that we definitely need to talk about more. So do you want to share a little bit about yourself for starters and your story and how you came to do what you do today, which is actually a really interesting space that you were in?
Well, ironically or not ironically, I got into spirituality with a lot of focus from an anxiety attack in 1998. And what that did was show me that how I was living wasn't working and that more was available and that all the structures and beliefs that I had held were too constrictive. And within that, I started to become very mindful of what I was doing and not doing, but also had an experience. I'll just share the short version of it where my grandmother, who was a dear figure in my life, had died in 1997 in February. And at the same time, I started working for a Shakespeare festival, and I was working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and didn't process that. And then in the fall of 97, I went to Europe and started to have all these spiritual experiences. I was dreaming about my grandmother and having all these synchronicities and a lot of intuition. And then I returned in January, the beginning of the year in 98, and I left my apartment in the care of a couple. And unknown to me, they broke up the day after I left, and the woman went on a heroin binge in my apartment. And so my apartment was basically destroyed when I returned. So I threw her out, but there was this negative energy in the apartment, and I didn't know what to do with it. So a couple of days later, I had an anxiety attack. Everything kind of fell apart. And in the rebuilding process, I was staying at my girlfriend's house. I would just go home to my apartment to shower and stuff. I didn't know how to get rid of it. A friend of a friend, a guy named Randall, told me what to do, none of which I would do now, but he told me what to do to reclaim my apartment. And my mother suggested, why don't you call in Archangel Michael? And so I did all of that. I ended up being in my apartment and basically screaming, "Get the bleep out of my apartment," to this kind of energy. And in my apartment, there was a long hallway. And I was at the bedroom with a glass of citrus, like a glass of lemons, a bowl of lemons. And at my corner of my eye, I saw in the living room like a black bear, like this big black thing. And I instinctively threw this glass bowl down the hallway. It landed perfectly in the center of the living room, did not break, but it landed. The toilet flushed and it was gone. Just led me to like, well, what happened? What actually happened? What actually worked? So I went to work, came back. The electricity was back on, the power, nothing electronic was working. And so it got my attention of like, well, I used intention. I was very clear, and that worked. So this started my having a relationship with angels, and to talk to them. I'm a skeptical person then, and just say like, well, what do you want me to know? Like, what's happening here? And just started building that relationship. But the main part of that was the use of my free will, and then starting to talk to people who had a spiritual practice and them highlighting how important that was, and that we can change our experience. And if we look at, for each of us, for the most part, almost everyone, that our core wound is one of insignificance, and that society and songs and such tell us that the good is somewhere else, that the power is somewhere else, and that we're on our own. And that's not true. It's countering all these narratives, be they political or advertising or things we see on television and such, or the internet, that the power is elsewhere, that we are insignificant, and to challenge that and to recognize our own significance. And never in spirituality is this about grandiosity or arrogance, but it is a space of I am Mark and I matter, and my experience matters. And the space that we are inhabiting now more and more is one of recognizing what is it to be a conscious adult. And especially in adolescent America, that's a kind of radical act. But in being a conscious adult, and to recognize that when we're in our conscious adult selves, that we have a confidence that is inclusive and encouraging, where we could include other people. So the old model, which we're witnessing now with greed, is mine, 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 not enough, not enough. And to go past that into a space of, I'm fine here, I have my needs met, let's help everyone else. So we create community, and we have those bonds, but we recognize ultimately that we are powerful, and that we do have a tremendous amount of support. And be that from angels, from goddesses, from guides, from ancestors, it doesn't matter so much. But the main point is that we do have help, and that our bodies are hardwired to receive that help. Our bodies respond instantly to that help. And perhaps rather than talk about that, Petra, if you don't mind, let's experience that. I think this is one of the two quote-unquote shortcuts we could take of individualizing energy. And I suspect everyone listening to this is a sensitive person.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear more about what you have planned now. And thank you for sharing your journey with us, and fascinating what you experienced. And yeah, let's do some of what you have planned now. I'm ready.
Sure. I think there's one last point about the story, which is most of us get into spirituality because of something traumatic happening.
Yes.
And that we learn through suffering or insight. So we might get into this from suffering or be experiencing suffering, but we eventually shift into insight of choice. So what we're going to do is just individualize energy. Okay? So
that sounds fascinating.
We could just take in a breath. If you could just say your own name out loud, I'll demonstrate. I am Mark. And just saying your own name.
I am Petra.
And then I'm not anybody else.
I'm not anybody else.
And just saying your own name again.
I am Petra.
Good. Just breathe into that. And what does that do? What do you feel with that?
There's actually something strange that happened. I can't really even put my finger on it, but it feels like I grew. My shoulders straighten out.
How about that, huh?
I feel bigger, if that makes any sense.
That does make sense. So what we're doing...
It's just a weird experience, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what we're doing with that is individualizing our energy and using our free will and recognizing that you exist and that you matter And as a sensitive person or as an empath, we are so used to everything coming toward us, everything being constrictive and limiting, and that we're having to negotiate that. And as sensitive people, especially as empaths, we get by taking on the energy of the people around us and our environments. So we're absorbing our encounters and our environments. And one of our superpowers then with being an empath is that if we're sensitive to energy, it means we could influence energy.
Wow. I love this experience, by the way. I would recommend that everyone listening try this for themselves also and do what we just did. It's an amazing feeling that it just bursts out from the inside. You feel that all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's amazing how quick that is. And why don't we just do a second thing, which is let's just call in our friend Archangel Michael. And if we could talk about angels for a moment, which is they're not connected with religion. Religions may adopt them, but they're free agents. And that the role of an angel is to help us out. That they're not human, they don't have human emotions, and they encounter us and see us through the lens of unconditional love, that they do love us unconditionally. And as people, we're not used to that. We might experience unconditional love for a little bit, like at a holiday or a sporting event or something like that, or with a pet or a child, but usually it's pretty limited. And we're used to conditional love. Well, I'll love you if you do this or you act this way. But angels don't do that. So let's just very simply, if we can, we'll just call in our friend Archangel Michael. So we could just say out loud, thank you, Archangel Michael, for being with me.
Thank you, Archangel Michael, for being with me.
And we'll just breathe into that. And we'll just feel that he has full access to us and that only good comes from this connection. He is the angel of clearing and protection. Do you have a sense of that, sense of him?
I felt like something was wrapping around me, not in a very constrictive way at all, but in a very loving and just protective way. Now that you said that, he is the protective energy. That's what Wonderful. I felt as well. Yeah.
And so everyone listening could do the exact same thing. Thank you, Archangel Michael, for being with me. And we'll just notice our bodies respond and he responds. And if we don't prescribe what that should be like. So you're having a very specific experience in what you're right where you are. And it might be different for everyone. But if we could just continue using our words and having an experience, and if we could also just say out loud, thank you, Michael, for individualizing my energy.
Thank you, Michael, for individualizing my energy.
And we'll just breathe into that. And how's that feel?
I felt this burst of, I want to say creativity. I'm almost excited in a way for amazing things to come. I don't know what, but I felt this burst of this encouraging creative energy, which feels like it is really deep down like part of who I am. I love creating things and I love looking at creative things. So yeah, wow, that feels amazing.
That's great. But if we could see what we're doing here is creating more space. We're doing the opposite of everything constricting and creating expansion.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So let's just breathe in. And in terms of building a relationship with the angels, this will be different for everyone. And this may sound a little weird, but if we could say, reflect to Archangel Michael, Michael, I feel all that.
Michael, I feel all that.
Good. Let's just breathe into that. And how's that feel?
You're right. It feels like I'm pushing outward. It's this sense of opening up and of almost expanding myself. It's a very intriguing feeling. I like that.
Yes.
Like I'm taking up the space that I'm meant to take up.
Yeah. And that space is yours. There's plenty of space. There's plenty.
Yeah.
Let's just say one other thing. If you could say out loud, "Thank you, Archangel Michael, for surrounding me with 1,000 meters of unconditional love."
Thank you, Archangel Michael, for surrounding me with 1,000 meters of unconditional love.
And we'll just breathe into that. And from the center of your heart, like a well, like a fountain, we'll notice an endless supply. You feel that, an endless supply of unconditional love. Let's let that unconditional love go into every single cell in your body. So the trillions of cells in your body are united in love, healing, and health. Every single cell is loved. Let's also notice every single system in your body being filled with love right now. Your nervous system, your immune system, your respiratory system, your circulatory system, your system of senses, your digestive system, your reproductive system, your structural system. Let's also let that go out. So there is this huge expanse of space. We'll notice 1,000 meters in front of you, 1,000 meters behind you, 1,000 meters to your left, 1,000 meters to your right, 1,000 meters above you and beneath you. So we'll just breathe into all that. And what do you notice with that?
Actually, my breathing is becoming easier. It's almost like I'm not breathing. There's no weight anywhere. I don't know if that makes sense. It feels
It does make
liberated.
sense.
And the breath, it doesn't take effort to take that in and out breath anymore. It feels like there's just space. It's liberated. Wow.
That's wonderful.
Beautiful feeling.
Yeah. So we're witnessing here how rapidly we could change our experience.
Yeah.
And this is true for everyone. It's going to be different for everyone. And this is not flattery, but you've done a lot of work on yourself. So if we honor all those hours and months and weeks and days and years, all that it leads to a space where we gain more dexterity with our energy field. And this is available to anyone and everyone listening, that we very simply individualize our energy and put forward a preference, an intention of what we want to experience. By doing this, we are releasing constriction and replacing it with expansion.
Even my head feels clear. That's amazing. And we've just been talking for a few minutes now. And that's happening. Yeah. All of the listeners should definitely rewind this if they're driving or anything and take some time to go through what we just went through and really feel what they feel and how that feels in their bodies and in their minds. But I have to say that is quite amazing what you just took me through.
Good. I'm glad. Also, everyone feels this, especially anyone listening to this is going to benefit because they're listening, because everyone wants more information and to have a different experience. We are all experts in our own pain. We already know what doesn't work. We don't need to linger in what doesn't work. We could have a solution. And very simply, we are creating more space and working with this powerful angel who's here to help us out, to help facilitate that. And in creating more space, there's more room for us to have our own thoughts, to have pressure be released. And also in the individual environments that we're in, to recognize that we are changing our relationship with that environment, that we are putting forward a strong intention. So 1,000 meters of unconditional love is a huge amount of space. So this goes into the computer, the phone, the walls, the windows, the dog, the microphone, but also the structure that you are in, perhaps other people in those structure or across the street, and that it allows there to be a different orientation, a different experience. So what we are letting go of is reacting to everything, reacting to all the energy, wondering what's going to happen. So for people with anxiety, which is a lot of people right now, that we're being hypervigilant. We're wondering what's going to happen next and feeling powerless. And this is a way to reestablish some power. If we could see that as positive and pristine and pure power. So it's power with rather than power over. But we get to influence it and we get to have a say.
Yeah,
and
I love
helps.
that. Absolutely. You and I, we talked a little bit before the recording on what reasons there are at the moment to have hope, because everything seems so bleak and there's so much anxiety and negativity happening. So what would you say can give us hope? Can these practices be part of our hope? What else is there? What can give us hope?
To put things into a context, which is, and it does sound like a joke, but it's not. Since David Bowie died, everything's changed at the beginning of 2016. And he became this very powerful guide, and he's here to help us out. But he sang to us because he felt like a misfit, and he sang to us with that view that we all feel like misfits. But if we could see that he's honoring each of us, and to see musicians, especially as mass communicators. And so it makes sense that he would become a really great guide. But since 2016, all the trauma has risen to the surface, be that individual trauma, national trauma, global trauma, universal trauma. What's interesting is that this is happening at the precise moment where we have more means than ever to heal trauma. But there's a context with that, which is things are coming up. And this year specifically, we're noticing the shift where anything that's ready to change is changing, which has felt very chaotic. Perhaps we could have the view that this change has already happened, that we're already in the new energy. And the new energy is one of inclusion and oneness, where everyone has all their needs met, and that we create a world where no one gets lost, and that none of us feel lost. Or the people, especially in America, feel like using a gun is going to make them be significant, that we're creating a world where that doesn't happen anymore. But with this year specifically, there's multiple things. The main one being that it is okay for us to heal, and it's important that we heal. And that if we see that a large perspective is that it's no longer okay to be unconscious, that this is a time to be fully conscious. Anyone listening to this podcast is already in that space. And so it's seeing what is here for us to do. It's not to fix the world, but it's to heal ourselves. And to recognize that we are one of millions and millions of people who are doing that exact thing. Mm-hmm. And this puts us as spiritual people into a role of leadership, that we are leading the way, that we're not reacting. To use a pinball analogy, that most people are the pinball bouncing around. Let's be the bumper. Let's not react to everything. Let's respond. Let's intend. So we can notice the panic of existing authority because they know that it's limited. Their time is up. So we're witnessing power grabs, greed, misinformation, all these different things. But if we could look at the larger picture, which is this is a time where we are manifesting the planet, where everyone does have their needs met, where we care for the planet, we curate a beautiful planet, and that we work with cooperation, coherence, and clarity, that we help each other out. But what we get to do as individuals is to be in harmony with our own healing and to recognize what is influencing what. And how can we, on a daily basis, participate and curate a better day for ourselves? And if it involves waking up and saying, I am Mark, I'm not anybody else, that's great. If that includes prayer and intention, thank you, angels, goddesses, and guides, for this wonderful day. Thank you for all of my encounters and environments being filled with love. Thank you for the highest good happening for everyone. Is there anything you want me to know? Just getting into conversation and intention and prayer, and using our words to let everything be bigger. Thank you, Archangel Michael, for surrounding me with 1,000 feet or 1,000 meters of unconditional love, and to feel that, which is big. So we're countering all the existing narratives. These are spaces where we get to have hope, that we're seeing where things have changed, and that all the people, especially in America, who are choosing to remain as unconscious as possible for as long as possible, who have handed over their power to others. We're not comfortable having their own power. That's okay. We're not going to make anyone wrong or bad. We could understand there's a context for that. But in that context, we could say, I am Mark, and I actually exist. I'm actually here. Thank you, angels, for helping me. And so creating that individualization, which also connects us to the group.
And that is very empowering, just on its own. Even those few words that you just said, when you let them resonate on how we did before, it is so empowering. Just as a single person sitting here, saying those words, listening to those words, it is very, very empowering.
I'm glad. And why don't we create a space where you could say it and we could leave room for everyone else to say it too, to say a couple things out loud. And just starting with your name. I am Mark.
I am Petra.
I actually exist.
I actually exist.
I am fully alive right now.
I'm fully alive right now.
My happiness matters.
My happiness matters.
Thank you, angels, goddesses, and guides for helping me in every part of my life.
Thank you, angels, goddesses, and guides for helping me in every part of my life.
And we'll just breathe in. And what do you notice there?
You know, I feel loved. That is probably the best way that I can put what I'm feeling right now. I feel loved. Just that. Completely. No questions, no conditions, no what am I going to do tonight or tomorrow? What have I accomplished? None of that. I just feel loved.
So there's no negotiation.
Yeah.
And this is unconditional love. That you are loved right as you are right now. And that's true for all of us, that even if we're anxious or stressed, there's something happening, that we are loved. And it's like changing the channel on the TV to the love channel. And perhaps we're a breath away of doing that, which is, and saying things like, I am Mark. And asking the angels for help, using free will, using our spirituality. Be it angels, be it guides, be it David Bowie. Be it Mary Oliver, be it Maya Angelou. These mass communicators who we have an affinity for. Our ancestors, a grandmother, to call them in. And to recognize that everyone who's passed away is in a space of unconditional love. And that they are available to us.
Yeah, like you said, it takes us from a place of just expending energy all day long, reacting to things, and actually bringing that energy in and turning that into love that is already there, and not just blindly throwing it out all day chasing after things, but actually settling in our center, taking that time, feeling who we are and feeling that love. It's quite a subtle shift, and it's very, very quick. So, yeah.
It's very quick. I think it's worth putting this also in the context of iconography around spirituality, angels and guides, is that there's going to be 100-foot tall Archangel Michael going, hello, Petra, how are you? And that's not the way it's going to happen. That it's all right here, and it's all in our bodies. It's within our bodies and right around our bodies. It's intimate to us, that connection, that contact. And that we all have experience with feeling these energies. And our bodies respond instantly to them. That we're hardwired for this kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah, innately it feels like it's been in me forever. Yeah. So, yeah, it's there for all of us to feel.
Yeah, so this gets into an inquiry, a question, which is, who are we? And we are individual expressions in these incarnations, that I am Mark, you're Petra, and that we are sharing an experience. But I am Mark and you are Petra, and everyone matters. Everyone has significance. And by saying that, where we started earlier, of like, I am Mark, I'm not anybody else. that creates a change. And it doesn't distance ourselves or isolate ourselves. But what it does is recognizing that I exist. And in my existing, I don't need to negotiate everything and negotiate my being or worth every single moment, which is exhausting.
Absolutely.
So we come back to where's the good? And if we could just breathe into the good being right here and creating harmony, and perhaps we drop out of some negotiation, we drop out of fear,
Yeah.
and we drop into love.
Yeah. And anxiety, overwhelm, or stress, anything that we're feeling, we can shift from that. Yeah.
We can. Yeah.
Wow. That has been extremely insightful. And thank you so much for sharing that with our listeners and with me. It has been an amazing experience. And like I said, I hope the listeners will rewind all of this and go through it again and really experience this for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we wrap up today, I think we should touch maybe on a bit of the anxiety that we've talked about and how it relates to technology today, because that has been a big part of what's happening nowadays. So do you want to maybe say a little bit about that and how you view that? What's been your experience with that?
I have a severely autistic nephew. And in learning about the things that, in going to many autism conferences and such, and learning at what are the different factors. And one of them is, for the most part, folks on the autism spectrum can't stand or be around technology, wireless technology, which is how our phones work. Extrapolating that into that everyone, for the most part, has a phone by their side or on their body all the time. And noticing, I have nephews and nieces who are children and teenagers, and they're all anxious. And in doing the work that I do and seeing people in their 20s and even their 30s, they're anxious. Most people are anxious, but younger people especially. And it's just seeing, well, why? Why? What's changed? And the phones are the things that have changed. And it's great technology, so it's not great for our bodies, and it's not great for our psychology. The main thing that we could perhaps put forward is that with this great technology, distance helps us out. So it's perhaps not having the phone on us all the time, perhaps have it being on the room, with the ringer on. The main thing would be at night that we change the habit of sleeping right next to our phone. And there's many reasons why, which is it's far too powerful a tool to be an alarm clock. So I recommend getting a battery-powered alarm clock, something that's not plugged in. And to have your phone in another room, perhaps turned off, or if you need it for security or to check in with someone, perhaps having it at least 10 feet or 10 meters away from you and away from your head, and if possible on airplane mode. And why that would be is so your phone is constantly connecting with cell towers. That activity is registered by your brain as light. So there's a message going to your brain that it's daytime and you should be awake. And one thing that has changed, there's this idea with the phones that we're constantly available. And that has to be challenged. So sleep has gotten deprioritized. And the essential aspect of health, including mental health, including feeling good, is sleep. That we get to have deep restorative sleep. So if your phone is buzzing and beeping with notifications all night, you're not going to get into a deep restorative sleep. You're just not. So it is having that shift, but also then recognizing your relationship with your phone. Do we need all these notifications? And what the phones do if they're calling to us all the time, is take us out of now. They take us out of the present moment. And if there's a larger thing that has happened with that, which is the anxiety physiologically is caused mainly by our brains working outside of balance. That what has nearly vanished is long brain waves. And long brain waves would come from, let's say, walking in nature, having a long conversation, reading a book, meditating, watching a movie without interruption, having sustained activity, creating, working, doing homework, whatever it is, for a sustained period of time with focus and not being interrupted. In musical terms, or the phones get us into the staccato thing of constantly interrupting, constant, our attention being jarred away from our focus. And legato musically, which is to have a long, sustained period of time. So if we look at it that way, in terms of our relationship with our phones, perhaps we could just have a space, especially at night, where we honor the long brain waves, that perhaps we put the phone away here and there and read a book or walk in nature. And noticing what has happened during the pandemic, and everyone was traumatized in a different way by the pandemic, that in our isolation, we are at home getting blasted by our phones and by Wi-Fi is a bit more benign, but it's a factor. But the other thing in a home that creates a lot of anxiety is digital assistant systems like Alexa or Google Plus and such, which is why they're like a cell tower that we think they're only working when we're talking to them. They're constantly blasting out a radius of at least 30 feet or perhaps 20 meters of wireless radiation. That's constant. It doesn't stop. And I had an instance in working with a client, a grandmother whose teenage granddaughter was suicidal. And I kept asking, these are things we don't talk about, but I kept asking, like, is she on her phone all the time? There's got to be a thing. And it turned out after a long time, we figured out she had an Alexa system in her bedroom. The chance of her sleeping with that there are zero, or definitely not getting into restorative sleep, but also getting into what does wireless radiation do to us? It creates inflammation. So we're seeing this big spike in inflammatory conditions like chronic fatigue.
Yeah, chronic pain. Yeah.
Chronic pain. And so if we think of with Wi-Fi, which is pretty benign, but it's a factor. And a lot of people have the modem in their bedroom that it creates this sound of, it's this constant jarring of our nervous systems, especially for sensitive people, that's too much. So perhaps if we could replicate nature in our bedrooms and to have nothing electronic in the bedroom and our phones off or somewhere else, any Alexa system perhaps throwing it away or turning it off and turning the Wi-Fi off at night. And a solution to that that's easy is to put it on a timer. So it goes off, let's say, from 11 to 7 when no one's using it. So you don't have to turn it back on or off. But all those different things will help. And I encourage people to just try those things and to perhaps have one night in your house where you all try that or individuals try that and just see how you sleep.
Yeah,
and see how you
that's a
feel.
good point. I'll park my phone downstairs for a few nights and I'm going to tell you what changes for me.
Yeah. And there is a gender thing with this, which is men want to provide, and men want to provide by having the best technology possible. So many men, especially dads, balk at this. They say, oh, no way. And it's just having a space of experimentation. That for anyone who's having anxiety, this is a space to look.
Yeah.
And what I think is important about this, once again, this is all invisible. But if I hold my phone for too long, my hand hurts. And I have a special case on and such, but still my hand hurts. And just seeing if this is on us all the time, that we're used to it. Very simply just to challenge, like, okay, I'm going to protect my brain space for a bit. And this, where it gets tricky is this is our means of communication. This is a space where we're connecting to others. So it's not about isolating yourself, but it's having time for your own autonomy, especially at night.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider that a lot of people already have anxiety, overwhelm, stress in their lives. And then we're adding, like you said, not getting restful sleep and having those feelings continue and perpetuated during the night. You wake up in the morning exhausted and tired, and you feel like you haven't even really slept. So, yeah.
And you haven't, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting into REM sleep, REM sleep, and just restorative sleep.
Yeah, to balance some of what's happening during your day and what you're experiencing there. So yeah, those are some great points. And like I said, I'm moving the phone out of the bedroom. You don't need it at night really for anything, right? You're supposed to be sleeping.
No, you don't. I understand, like if someone's in the hospital or something like that. I understand that. But maybe just like having it away or having it on a different level than your head. I do think also with regard specifically to anxiety, that this is a physiological thing, not a psychological thing. And just giving ourselves room. And that may resolve a lot of the anxiety, may not resolve all of it. And then we get into things like, I am Mark, I'm not anybody else. Just all these different things added up to create autonomy, but to value ourselves. Yeah. And to value sleep, to value our nervous system, and to honor our nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely. I really feel like you have given so much wisdom in this time that we have spent together. And I am sure that listeners have connected with this episode and are probably curious at this point how they could work with you and what kind of programs or services do you offer and how can they get in touch and what kind of things do you help people with? What do you work on with them?
The goal of anything, be it a group, be it a recording, or be it a one-on-one session or a reading, is to make the world bigger and to put options on the table. And to also see with angels and guides and goddesses, what did they say? What did they want you to know? And that creates a lot of space. I have a lot of free content, especially on YouTube, and there's some on Insight Timer also, that app. I have always at least 2 free events on Zoom. This is based on West Coast time, California time, that are on my website. And I also do readings. I do one-on-one sessions, either 15 minutes, half hour, an hour with people. And people can contact me through email or through the phone, through my website. But there's a lot of different ways to connect. And with the recordings, they're mostly of the free health spaces that I have. Before the pandemic, I got 2 pieces of guidance that kept repeating. One was Zoom, because I wasn't using Zoom. I'd use a phone system. My phone system stopped working, so I started using Zoom again. And then the words health space, health space, health space. So when the pandemic happened, I started doing 4 free health spaces a week, so people had somewhere to go. And all these recordings came out of those, and they continue. But just very simply creating a space where something can happen, people can connect. Yeah. So people connect on social media. There's lots of stuff on Instagram under my name. I'm active there, but also just with the YouTube, and also anyone can contact me through my site.
Amazing. And we will be linking to all of Mark's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can connect with him for if you'd like to have a reading, if you want to participate in any of the free events that he hosts, or you can connect with him on Insight Timer as well and check out what he has there. And we will put the links to all of that in this episode. Well, this has been another incredible episode, and I really hope that our listeners have enjoyed our journey into these spiritual solutions for anxiety as much as I have. It is incredible of everything that you have offered us today. And like I said, this wisdom that you have brought in explaining this and demonstrating how this can work so quickly in our lives. I just want to thank you so very much for being here today, Mark. Thank you for your time and thank you for your insights.
You're welcome. And thank you for the invitation and for this space. I also just want to say to anyone listening that you matter and your happiness matters. And it's okay to change things. And we do that a little bit at a time, like 1% at a time, which may feel insignificant, but 1% could be huge. And just these little changes, rather than trying to kick open the door. When we kick open the door spiritually, it closes again. But these integrations that we can do, and just the thought of like, I am Mark, I'm not anybody else. Thanks, angels. And just making the world bigger. These little actions, but just that, for everyone to have hope and to feel valued and seen and heard. And thank you again for this space.
Yeah.
Thanks for the good conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure this will be very enlightening to a lot of our listeners, and there's lots to practice and try out in here and to apply in their own lives and for their own healing journeys. So yeah, thank you so much for giving so much value today. I truly appreciate it. Thank you, Mark, and take really good care of yourself.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much for your kind words and for this space. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.